Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. So at this point, I just want to kind of give a little background on how we as a country got to where we are with homelessness. And so let's take a few minutes, and then we're going to go into the Q&A after that. There's also some cards going around, and on those cards you have the URL for tony-themovie.com. There's all the footage for all full-length interviews for all these, and a lot more information on that website. And on the back, there's a steps of what you can do to help. So basically, how did we as a country get to this point where we are with homelessness? So in the 60s, we had mental institutions and people could be locked up, and we felt as a society that that was inhumane. And so we deinstitutionalized people, and we're going to basically put them into regular apartments, but with really good support services to help them be successful in their, be successfully housed. And so that was one big thing that happened. And then in the 80s, there was a lot of defunding of the social security network and social services. And then also, just changes in the economy have happened. And so in the 80s, we really started having this large population of homeless folks on the street that we did not have in the 50s and 60s. And so the government wasn't really addressing this issue. And so how did we as a society address it? A lot of smaller organizations, nonprofits, church organizations said, hey, there are people on the street who are hungry. Let's feed them. So we opened a lot of soup kitchens all across the country. There are people who lack shelter. What do? Let's provide them some shelter, a tent shelter or an emergency shelter bed, so that they can stay there a while until they can find something more permanent. And then we saw these people who, really had big issues in their lives, maybe drug and alcohol problems or anger issues or lack of employability. And we said, well, let's put them through some programs to help them reintegrate back into society, kind of fix these people who have kind of been broken. And those are called transitional housing programs. And basically, as a 2-year program, in order to get the housing, you have to do these things to help, you have to be sober, you have to be in a job training program. And so we created a lot of transitional housing programs. And these were the 3 main ways that we addressed homelessness. And throughout the 80s and 90s and through today, we're still using these methods, and we're spending a lot of money on them. And so in the 90s, this guy, Sam Sambrias, who was in New York City treating patients with mental illness, he worked with a lot of people, and then he would see them, he'd get them stable and on their medications, and a few weeks later he'd see them homeless and on the streets in New York City, and he felt like he was just spinning his wheels. And he said, if I could just have a place for this patient to live first, and then I'll get them stable and on their medications, I think I can be much more successful. So he tried this, and he really had a lot of success with it, and it then spread across the country. And then by 2010, it was proven enough that HUD and the Obama administration and this HEARTH Act really said, hey, we're going to focus on this because we see that getting people into housing first is much more effective in terms of actually reducing homelessness, and it's much more effective in actually helping people in the way that they need to be helped. And so the funding requirements, you need to follow these principles in order to continue receiving funding. And it's been slowly implemented over a long time, and now finally in 2018, those requirements are becoming stricter and stricter, and we're actually starting to really implement it. So that's kind of how we got to where we are. In San Diego, when we started filming this movie in 2016, we were looking at other places in the country and going, why are we not doing anything in San Diego? What's going on? Why in Silicon Valley are the 5 County Board of Supervisors members just gung-ho about this? Why do they have a regional plan up there? Why are they doing a bond measure there? Why in Houston have they done all this? Why have we not done it here? Why do they have a strong infrastructure organization, a strong regional task force on the homeless that's really carries a strong leader, an experienced leader who's carrying this out? Why do we not have this? And so as we were making the movie, a lot of these things happened in San Diego. In January 2017, the Regional Task Force on the Homeless became a much stronger organization. Before, they just did the point-in-time count. And then they were tasked with actually carrying out the wishes of the board that manages this whole issue in San Diego, the COC board. And then they did this nationwide search for a new executive director. And our executive director before was this great person, but she wasn't necessarily the person who could twist the arms behind the scenes and really have the power to carry out a big region-wide effort like this. And they found somebody who had experience with this in Utah and had success with it and brought him to San Diego. And then they also did this search for a consulting company who could help us make a regional plan. And they found a group that we were very thankful that it wasn't LaSalle Developments. As much as we love them, they're a local group who has a lot of contracts with local governments. And we wanted an outsider who could really give us critical feedback. And you saw in Seattle, they said, hey, Focus Strategies came into our region and said, you, the Gates Foundation, the King County, the city of Seattle, you got to get more aligned. And the nonprofits and service providers, you're not really living up to national standards, and here's how you can do it better. So that was really tough feedback for them to get. And we're going to get that kind of feedback in July or August or whenever the phase 2 of the regional plan comes out. And so we come out of this kind of cautiously optimistic. There's a lot of stuff that has happened that is good, and there's a lot of momentum now. And there's this potential for a $950 million bond measure to be on the ballot, or potentially also a TOT tax that could contribute some money to homelessness. And so we're going a lot in the right direction, but there's so much that could go wrong. And this is where you all come into play. It's that a lot of people really need to have a lot more understanding of homelessness, of what causes it, and a lot more empathy towards it, so that they're motivated to vote yes on new funding sources that could come into play, and that they have a greater understanding of kind of what we've been doing wrong as a system and what we can do better by going and being interested in the regional plan and some of the best practices. One really important point is that I went down there were kind of two roads you go down when you get interested in this topic. As you start trying to identify solutions. And originally I went down this road, it was all about the money. I'm like, we've got a lot of great service providers and they're doing great work, and we just need a lot more money to make this work. And then there's another road, which is, well, we don't need more money, there's lots of money there, we need to implement the best practices and operate more efficiently, and that's how we can solve this problem. And so then I discovered that in San Diego, we need both. We need the money and we need the best practices implemented. So in Houston in 2011, when they first kind of got started on addressing this issue, they had some of the lowest cost of housing and just living costs in the country. And yet they had a huge homeless population. And so what they did is really they just implemented the best practices. They're like, we're going to stop cycling people through our shelters and our transitional housing programs. We're going to rededicate all that money to permanent housing. And all these Section 8 housing vouchers are going to be really focused on people who are homeless. And so that's what they did, and they really vastly reduced their homelessness. So it's not just about housing, but in San Diego it's a big part about housing. We need the money and we need to implement these best practices, and if we don't 100% do both, we're not going to make significant progress. So we need to be the watchdogs and the educators, and we need to make this happen. But as a general question of what can I do to help, that I think we can answer. Shall we go with that? Okay. There's two ways, what does that question really mean? What can I do to help? Does it mean what can I do to create more comfort on the street for people who are homeless, who are in really uncomfortable situations? Or does it mean what can I do to reduce the number of homeless people on the street? And both are admirable things to do, but I want to divide it into two. If your goal is to reduce the number of homeless people on the street, you would probably want to be more of the advocate. You'd want to advocate towards your county supervisors. The county is so important in this. They have a $7 billion a year budget and maybe a lot of extra money sitting around, and the city has a $2 billion a year budget and maybe going bankrupt, who knows. But so advocating is extremely important. Another thing that you can do if that's kind of not what you're interested in is you can help people individually. And instead of maybe passing out 100 sandwiches on the street, maybe really get involved in one person's life and help them through the social services system. People who have bad physical health problems or mental illness, and you helping them through will be a big learning experience for you and help you become an advocate because you'll want to help change that system. or you and your family or your church group could come up with some money to help them with rent. Maybe there's somebody who can get their life back together if they just had a few months of rent. And you could provide that. And so that's one way to help actually get people off the street. And then the other thing of, just really helping people who are on the street have a better life. You can feed them, people get hungry, you can provide them with clothing, you can do things, ask them what they want and give that to them. So yeah, that's I think a lot of what you can do to help. There's a whole section on the website called What Can I Do to Help? It starts with educating yourself. There's a couple key videos. The long form interview with Mark Eckenbaum in Houston is a really good overview of the best practices so you can understand that. Going to the Regional Task Force on the Homeless meetings. There's also the San Diego City Council Select Committee. I would recommend going to these meetings early and staying late because it's the networking before and after that's super valuable. Sometimes the meetings are really boring, but sit through them, it's worth it, I promise.
And I'd like to add something to that too. They cost $1,300 or more per person a month to sleep in a tent. And I have a tent. I just need a place to put it where I won't be bothered. That's outrageous to spend that much money on housing people. And this money is coming from the pot of money that they're going to use to build permanent supportive housing. So really, it's a temporary fix. These people are there temporary. These tents aren't going to be permanent. So when they're taken down, those people are going to be back on the street again. It just looks to the general public like the issue's being solved because you don't see as many homeless, but it's not true. They're just put away for a while. We really need to put that money toward building houses, not this. This is what we've been doing for years and years. It's not working.
And we have a question over here. The mic's coming your way.
Have you found a safe place to be?
Tony, have you found a safe place to be?
Yeah, Dennis, I have. No, yeah, my girlfriend and our dog, we have our tent in her yard, so we're not bothered by police, and we have access to showers and kitchen and everything, so our life is a little bit better. We're working with a navigator to find us places, and she's found us too, actually, already, but the system is so broke that both of them fell through. It's just, this last time was that everybody worked on this for 9 months, and we finally got a place, and the last thing we had to do was turn in a disability slip, saying that we had some kind of disability to even get in there, and
or an income. Right?
Or an income, and we were 1 day late, so they just canceled the whole thing, and I don't know, it just didn't work out.
What happened the first time with Cypress?
With Cypress, another place we were going to go into, we had our paperwork ready, and then Ginger got arrested, and the cops lost the paperwork, so we had to go back and get driver's licenses and social security cards and documents, and by the time we got all that, we missed that deadline. So there's always a deadline. It's like the Simon Says game, it seems like they throw a lot of stuff at you to see what you're going to mess up on, and when you mess up, they say, you don't get it. That's what it seems like. It's not easy. It's not like Tao and Houston says, we take them in, no judgment, we say yes. That's how they do it there. Here, it's like Kelly said, no, no, no. Not too many people and not enough resources. It's totally different here in San Diego. There's always going to be people that are going to come from the other side, like you were talking about, like the guy that was in the film saying he doesn't like when his grandchildren and him have to step over homeless people coming out their door. I feel for him. There's always going to be people like that it's going to be hard to get on your side. They say, why should my taxes help you when you messed your life up? Why should I be the one to help you? And I think a supervisor in Los Angeles said it best. He said we got to a point in LA where we can no longer avert our eyes to this tragedy become so big that they had to solve it because it was the right thing to do. And homeless people, they want to be invisible. They don't look in your eyes because they don't want you to see them. They're embarrassed of how they're living. It's not a way that we're proud of. We have no other way. We're surviving. And the way to deal with them probably best is just treat them like a human being, say hi to them once in a while. I wouldn't go to the scary ones, just if you use your best judgment, but most of them are probably more scared of you than you are of them.
And just further to your question, so one huge way I think you can help build more empathy is to put your name on that email list and then share this movie with as many possible people as you can in about a week or two when I release it on YouTube. If there's a large bond measure on the ballot, there's going to be some money behind a public campaign to get support for that. And that's probably going to be the biggest way to reach the most number of people.
But to whom is it being shown? How are you getting it out? And how are you getting it out to the people that, in this instance, count because they have some control over it?
So in the making of the movie, we really had a challenge in late 2016 of getting interviews with anyone, especially Ron Roberts. I chased him for months. But the way we did it is we interviewed people who were friendly to the cause, Steve Russell and Chris Ward, and we, made sure they looked good. And then we interviewed other people who were maybe less friendly, and we made sure they didn't look bad. And then people said, hey, I want to be part of this. These people aren't going to get us. So in making the movie, we got to meet a lot of people, and everybody we met in the administration, at county, at the city, at the different service providers, at the regional task force. We got their email address, and they're all on this email list. And so they've been seeing these videos for a long time. So I think we've gotten to a lot of the people who are involved deeply in it. And now we're trying to get to the people who don't know about this, who don't care about it. You all care about it. The next layer is to get to the people who don't care about it. So that's my hope in about 2 weeks, is that we can start reaching those people. A few things we've done is we've done 40 screenings since October 1st, reaching about 5,000 people. So this is the last official screening, so you all are a very special audience. So we reached about 5,000 people. We've got about 1,500 emails on our email list, probably about 1,600 after tonight. Everybody gets their email there. And then we did 3 film festivals. We did the New Urbanism Film Festival in LA. We did San Diego Film Week here, and it was nominated for Best Feature-Length Documentary. We're going up against Funko, a story about toys, so I think we have a good chance of winning. April 8th, we're going to be at Humphreys for the award ceremony. Hopefully we win. We were in Newport Beach, not as part of their film festival, but with their film festival crew. And then we were in Dallas as well. Different organizations, like we have our regional task force on the homeless here that's leading the cause. Every region has their version of that, and this movie can be useful for them to help their city and their county and their general public understand the importance of the best practices and such. So if you know people in other regions who want to show it, they can do that as well. So the main thing we're going to do is release it on YouTube, hopefully get a lot of people to share it, and also do some Facebook ads and Instagram ads to really get it out locally here as soon as possible to influence the June and November elections. Next question, please. The other part of your question is, has the county really embraced the Housing First philosophy? And the people in the administration understand this. The people who work at the county understand it, and Ron Roberts certainly understands it. And the question is he willing to put the kind of money and political capital behind it? He only is going to be in office for a little while longer, so it's not really so much of it's kind of a moot point. But I think the bigger thing is, does a majority of the county board of supervisors understand it and fully embrace it and support it? I would say no. I mean, I don't know what Kirsten Gaspar knows or doesn't know about it, but I don't think she's like gung-ho Housing First. And then we've got Bill Horn and we've got others, and I think some of them maybe. I don't really know them very well, but I think all across the county we need people going to their county supervisors. So people in Oceanside or Escondido or Lakeside or Chula Vista. This can't just be a City of San Diego thing. We need people across the county to be advocating to their county supervisors and saying, hey, are you familiar with this regional plan? Maybe the first time you go to them, they'll say, there's a regional plan? What? I had no idea. I mean, these people sometimes need to be educated. Some people know, some people don't, and it's a lot of education. Next question.
There have been plans like this plan that you're talking about before. Hundreds of thousands of dollars spent, and in some efforts, I was reading one 10 years ago, the grand jury recommended that the San Diego City put restrooms for the homeless downtown, or there's going to be serious disease outbreaks, and they never did it. That's exactly what happened. So this is the thing about this is that when this plan comes out, everybody's in place now. They get political support. Businesses are more than willing to throw money at it to get rid of the homeless in front of their shops. Everybody wants to solve this problem. But the point is going to be when this plan comes out to get the political people, the people that are making the decisions to do it. You know, that's going to be the point, because it could come out and they're going to say, well, it's a great plan, and put it on the shelf and not do anything about it. We'll be right where we were before. But now we have a chance to do something about it, and that's why we made this film, and that's only half of it now. You guys have to help with the other half of it. Yeah. So, anyways, I hope you liked the little